So, welcome to another edition of Tell Me How You're Mighty, talking about cheating and how to navigate the various challenges after you found out that somebody in your life has cheated. Sarah Gorrell and Tracy Shawn with you once again talking about this issue. And we thought today that we'd talk about those people who have forgiven, who have discovered their loved one is cheating on them, and then looked at maybe where the problem was, their issues in it causing their other half to maybe have an affair. They've forgiven, the rules have been laid down, and then the cheating happens again. How common is this? Tracy and I thought that we'd discuss this particular issue today. Do you know what brought it on, Tracy? I was reading the papers. You know, when you're sort of rummaging through the celebrity section,
As one
and
does.
there was this happens a lot where you see very high profile celebrity couples, and if you look at both of them, neither have really got reason to cheat. They've got a glorious life. They go to celebrity events. They're largely both very glamorous and equally paired.
Yeah.
And then you see where this glorious relationship has come to an end. One of them has been cheating, usually with a co-star in something they're involved in, and you read about the cheating, and quite often there's a sort of smug piece at the end of it saying, but it's all right. We've realized how we were meant to be together. The rules have been laid down. The relationship is back on track. There will be no more cheating. We are joyful. We are happy. And then
That's
about 2 years
we're
later,
stronger. We're
yeah,
stronger for it.
two
Yeah.
years later, another article appears. Cheating's happened again. And I can't even remember who this was that I saw was reading about, but it was another showbiz couple. And it was one where the cheating had happened again. She'd had enough. Divorce was underway. It had got nasty, bitter. There was no forgiveness second time round. What do you make of all this carry on?
Well, I think we're confusing two issues. One is recidivism and the other is forgiveness. But they are interconnected. And the way I think they're connected is that chumps have this idea, and it's amplified in the media and our popular narrative, that if you forgive somebody, it's like magic fairy dust. You forgive them, da 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 da, and they will be so moved by your compassion and your mercy, and and everything will be better. And there's this kind of quid pro quo in that forgiveness. I forgive you. Now you're going to straighten up and fly right. And then that doesn't happen because that forgiveness, lack of forgiveness, if you suck, if you don't suck, has nothing to do with people cheating. It's a choice and it's bad character. And your forgiveness has nothing to do with their character. And whether or not you forgive, I tell people you can move along just fine without forgiving. And forgiving is very personal and really has nothing to do with your relationship enduring or not. Now, people disagree, especially people of a religious bent. But as for it, forgiving a cheater and them doing it again, oh yeah, sure. I mean, those people wash up on my shores every day, and that happened to me. And that's why I'm chump lady. I'm not omnipotent lady. I did that, sure.
I
Yeah.
suppose there are people that say, there was a cheating incident early on in my relationship. I forgave. The marriage has been stronger. There has been no cheating since. I mean, it can happen, can't it?
Sure, it's not outside the laws of physics. Yeah. You know, I mean that's where I get tarred with the once a cheater, always a cheater paintbrush. And I'll make the argument again. I don't think it's once a cheater, always a cheater. I think to cheat, you have to have a very entitled mindset. You have to be narcissistic. You have to be able to suppress empathy for your partner. And those are very deep traits. And to change them is if you're inclined to change them, is a very long arc with probably a lot of missteps and other affairs along the way. I just think entitlement feels good. Humility and, the rending of garments and the remorse and the feeling terrible like a shitty person doesn't feel good. And if you're prone to escapism, which is what an affair is, then you're probably going to keep your entitled mindset because it feels good. And also, if your partner has forgiven you, there's no consequence, right? I mean, but it sounds like you're saying in this celebrity couple, like she forgave him, but there was policing. It was
There
trespass.
was policing. There was policing, and there were promises made, and there were declarations of it will never happen again. There was all sorts of discussion about why it happened in the first place. And, largely it was the usual suspects that there'd been too much focus on the kids, not enough
Oh,
focus on one another.
those damn
All the
children.
usual, all the usual cliches that come out. But it is interesting, isn't it? Because this isn't an uncommon thing where you see people that have made these very public proclamations that they are going to stay together, that their public know there's been cheating, and yet still it happens again. When actually you'd kind of think that having been through that so publicly, there should be more of an invested interest in trying to keep things going.
Yeah, I mean, you mean in terms of forgiveness, meaning that people
In
would keep.
terms of image
Oh,
management, because a lot of this is about how you look to other people, isn't it?
yeah, well, there's something absolutely aspirational and take the high road and smugness about I forgive you. And I call this, again, the fairy dust forgiveness. It is all impression management. And I'm above those baser emotions of grief and anger. I am magnificent and I forgive you. It's going from a place of humility and, being chumped, which is shitty and vulnerable, to getting the superior place of being godlike and conferring forgiveness. And so it's seductive, right? It's seductive, and it also people can, look to you. Oh, they're above their petty squabbling about where his dick wanders. It's minimizing that you've been abused and that betrayal is traumatic. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people who can't rise above it. I think you do this at great distance over time and confer forgiveness how you understand that personally. I'm not down on forgiveness, but what you're saying is this kind of impression management forgiveness, forgiveness for the celebrity rags or whatever. Yeah, I think that leaves people feeling like they're doing it wrong. I think it leaves people feeling less than, like I'm having a very hard time getting over this, letting it go, feeling gracious towards this person who keeps hurting me. I think it's a very confusing message. I mean, what about you? Do you
Well,
forgive?
no, well, you see, I think I am quite a forgiving person, and I think what happened with me when I found out my husband was having an affair is I think I went through all of this, but in a kind of very short period of time. Within the period, so I found out he was cheating in August. By
Hmm.
September, I'd forgiven him. He was promising he was going to leave the other woman. I told him to leave the house, and he was still living supposedly on his own. He wasn't. It transpired. He was living with her and her parents, but this is a different story. And
Hmm.
he was desperate to come home. And I said, no, look, we need to sort things out, and we need to. And then he came up with a cunning plan that we both leave our jobs and we go and run a bed and breakfast together. And what I hadn't realized at the time that he wanted to do this because he was still embroiled with her. And it was only when I found receipts that I realized that he was still carrying on with her. So I sort of have been through the whole forgiveness,
Hmm.
thinking that our relationship was stronger as a result of the affair, because of course you feel like you've won. You
Yeah.
feel like you've triumphed. You feel like some younger woman has come in tried to steal your man, but no, you're the better person. They're staying with you. And so I went through all that thinking I'd won, then realizing that actually he was still playing us off against one another and feeling quite pleased with himself. And then I immediately went straight for the divorce. That was the end of it. That was the cut-off point. There was no further shenanigans, antics going on. But I feel I can relate to people that have forgiven, because I for a brief short time I had that experience of
Yeah.
thinking it was all okay. But also it wasn't okay, because every time his phone pinged, every
Yeah.
time I went out the door, I'd be wondering where he was. So despite that sort of idea that it makes your marriage stronger,
Hmm.
I never trusted him. Even when I thought I'd forgiven him, I never trusted him. And you can forgive maybe, but can you ever trust again when someone has undermined that trust so dramatically?
No, and it's not just trust. I mean, for you in the goodness of your heart to forgive him and mean it sincerely, like I'm going to take this pain and this terrific trauma and this violation, and I am going to put it aside because I love you that much is such a gift. And while I'm down on reconciliation, because for all the reasons you just outlined, because it blows up in your face usually, it is a beautiful impulse directed at somebody who is incapable or unwilling to appreciate it. And you gave him a gift and he shat on it. I mean, he just saw, he feels entitled to gifts, right? And so he just said, yeah, it's my right and due. I can shit on Sarah and she'll forgive me. And so green light. And so you guys are just operating entirely different moral universes, so yeah. And the idea that, and I'm sure because I did this too, there's some idea that he will see what a big gift this is. He will see how like amazingly powerful my love is and my forgiveness, and it will change his behavior, right? Because we think, again, it's go start at the beginning. I think it's a bit of a quid pro quo. We don't intend it because we give it, but there is the thought that it will be appreciated and acknowledged and that it will change them, and it doesn't. And so I have after being chumped and running the blog, I have a very different idea of forgiveness. And I think forgiveness for me, and you can have a different, everybody can agree to, it's very personal forgiveness. For me, it is acceptance. Forgiveness is meh. It's like, I don't care. Karma, I give it to Jesus, I give it to the universe, I give it to some higher power to sort out what happens to you. Judgment, it's not my call. And I mean, I joke, kind of, not sort of, like, I didn't back you over with a truck. You're forgiven. Like I did not exact revenge. And that's enough. That's enough. We put so much pressure on people to show their magnanimousness or magnanimity.
And if you don't, you're a bitter, nasty
Yeah,
individual.
you're a bitter bunny, right? And then that gets to the whole, why can't you be friends? Why can't you be friends with your ex for the children?
See, I do forgive now. I don't, but I don't. Again, it's
But
that
he's
point
not
where
in
I
your
don't
life.
care. I don't care. So I forgive because I don't care what he does or what he gets up to. I'm not monitoring his phone. I'm not obsessively wondering where he's got to, why he's late. I'm not dancing around like an idiot trying to make sure that his needs are met because that was the reason he had the affair, because I wasn't looking after his needs. I was too busy with work and children and other grown up stuff. I
Yeah.
can now just get on with my own life. So I completely forgive him. Don't really give him a second thought, apart from when I'm talking to you about him and what he got up to. It doesn't really feature in
Yeah.
my life at all. And that's fine. But I do remember so clearly when I tried to forgive and it was trying to save the marriage, trying to keep the status quo. A lot of that came actually not from forgiveness, but from vulnerability, from
Mm,
wondering how I was going to bring up four children on my own, from wondering how I'd manage on my own, how I'd be this single person in a village of couples. It
so you
wasn't
think you
so much.
forgave out of fear?
I think I did forgive out of fear, yes. I
Mm,
think if you'd have asked my younger pre-children self, if I'd been in different circumstances, if I'd have been going out with somebody who we didn't have the same financial commitment, we didn't have the house together, the children together, the history together,
yeah.
it would have been very easy to say, no, what you've done is absolutely unforgivable. But when there's so much at stake and when you are so vulnerable and you're thinking, who's going to pick the kids up? How am I going to juggle work and four children? Who's this other woman that's going to be involved in my children's life? It's not so much about forgiving them, it's about trying to save a life that you've got used to. It's about trying to
Yeah.
protect yourself from the fear of a very different life where you feel very vulnerable. So I think forgiveness is a very, very complex area.
No, it's absolutely complex. And to the point, you make a good point about the person who's in the position of forgiving after this is the vulnerable person. There's vulnerability. And I find it very offensive. I call them forgiveness trolls, that people look to vulnerable people. And the first question is, have you forgiven? Have you forgiven him or her? Like you haven't even processed the violation. You haven't even figured out your next move. And it's, well, can't you hold grace in your heart for this person that, they can be better or they have potential to be better or they won't do it again? I mean, You have to wish cast. You have to, and it's so offensive. And I think it has a lot to do with other people's discomfort that they don't want to see this rift, or they don't want to look at the power imbalance. And so forgiveness, we'll just slather forgiveness all over it, and everybody's, smiles everybody, and it's all better. And now we can go back to the way we were. And who does that benefit? Who does that forgiveness benefit?
I think what's interesting as well is you see it over and over again because you've read many of these stories on Chump Lady, and you've seen it over and over again where people have forgiven. They've changed their ways, they've worked on the relationship, they've focused, they've put the cheater at the focus of their life to make sure it doesn't happen again
Right.
until it does happen again. And that staggers me that somebody who has claimed that they had the affair because their needs were unmet, suddenly they become this big central character in the drama. They have their ego massage, they get told how wonderful they are, they get told they're forgiven for some appalling behavior, and then they do it again. And what motivates that? Why would someone do that when they've begged for forgiveness, when they've been forgiven, when they've said how important someone is? And then before you know it, they're up to their old tricks again.
Because again, it's entitlement. And if we just worked from that basic supposition that people cheat because they're entitled and they lack empathy for their partners, it wouldn't be a surprise when they keep behaving that way, because those are deep character traits. Now, if you work from the conventional wisdom that people cheat because you suck, they're dissatisfied, or they're unhappy with their partners, or they don't get enough sex, or they don't get the right kind of sex or enough sex, or whatever. If you put it all on the chump and the relationship and not the character of the cheater, then you believe in the voodoo. You believe, oh, if I forgive, or I do this, or I improve myself, or I don't know, have tantric sex or something, that everything's going to be better. They won't do it again. But of course they do it again because they lack empathy for their partners and they feel entitled to more at your expense. That's a character problem. That's immutable. Forgiveness, it doesn't matter. I mean,
And at this point, when it happens again, you've invested more of your life,
yeah.
your time, your energy, your shared moments. You've invested more time in a person who has shown once again that they're not that bothered about you.
Yeah, and maybe at that point, some people feel like, well, I had to give it a shot. I had to try it. I gave them my grace, and now I gotta get out of here. Uh, okay. I mean, if you forgave and it blew up in your face, don't beat yourself up. It was a beautiful impulse directed at the wrong person. But then that's not to say you can't forgive in other situations, and the world needs more peace and forgiveness, that's for sure. I think these kinds of things, to me, again, this is my personal take on it. I think I was only able to forgive, and by that I mean meh. I mean acceptance, radical acceptance that this happened many years after the fact, when this person was no longer in my orbit, had no power over me, I had no contact with them. Then I could kind of Chernobyl it in my head, like we're just gonna drag the lid on that and go, it's forgiven. I accept it. It happened. The other, I wanted to mention too, when on my blog, and I've written about this, when I went through it, I found this quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu in South Africa. And you would think that, religion, it would be an archbishop, that it would be this gooey kind of forgiveness. And he had this phrase that really resonated with me when I went through it. And he said that to feel anger and hate, it can coexist with forgiveness, and that the depth of your anger relates to the depth of your love, and that you have these strong emotions because you were so deeply invested, because you loved. And it's a very complicated form of forgiveness. And it meant a lot to me when I heard it. And of course, I shared it with the cheater who just shrugged. But, I thought, this is true. This is true that, of course, Archbishop Desmond Tutu was involved in Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, where people were confessing the most god-awful crimes against people. And it's not that they were forgiven, but then the country could kind of move forward after the stuff was confessed. So he knew what he was talking about. And you can't not, if you're a human being, hear about these horrific abuses and not feel moved to anger and even hatred. And I think the same thing is true in our interpersonal relationships. You can have these very strong feelings, and that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you an unforgiving person. It's just you're grappling with the violation. And I think you can get, if it, and if the person is contrite, I mean, okay, I'm going to stop here. The other thing about religious forgiveness is that in most religious traditions, there has to, before there can be forgiveness, there has to be confession of sins. They have to acknowledge what they did, and there has to be recompense. And I think our modern conversations about forgiveness ignore both of those things. I mean, your cheating husband, was he saying, here, Sarah, here's my pension, like, take me back. Here's recompense. Here's everything I did and with whom. Did you get that?
No, I got offered the opportunity to run a bed and breakfast with him and give up my job and my life. That was about it. And I suppose that again, it's an indication of the shallowness of it.
Yes,
I
exactly.
have rocked our whole lives, so you give up absolutely all the remaining stability in yours, your career, your pension, your friends, your community, and we'll run away together.
Yeah.
And I think, gosh, if I'd have forgiven to that degree, I could have really found myself in an awful situation 2 years down the line when I had given up everything to
Yeah.
find that potentially, and I would imagine almost certainly, he would have been doing it again. I wonder though whether the other applies. So I read another article in the paper a little while ago from somebody who had discovered that her husband, not dissimilar to you actually, he'd been having the affair with the other woman when they got married.
Yeah.
So he'd got married knowing that there was someone else on the horizon.
That was my story.
She discovered it very early on in her relationship, 6 months in,
Oh,
and
gee.
she divorced him. That was the end of it.
Hmm.
And many years on, she wrote this article. It was in the Daily Mail, and she said, "It's my biggest regret. I should have forgiven him. I shouldn't have given up. He was the love of my
Oh,
life."
I saw that, and it got put through the universal bullshit
Oh,
translator.
did you get
Yes,
that
I
one? And I
remember
just
that
I
story.
found that really intriguing, and there was all sorts of flowery language going on
Oh, Lord.
about
The one who
stolen
got
gazes.
away. The one who
Yes,
got away.
exactly.
Oh.
How does that work? Do you think that there are many people that regret not forgiving?
No, you know what? I run a blog with literally millions of stories, and I have not found one person that regrets leaving a cheater, and acts like they're the one that got away. Now, I could be a self-selecting sample, but I'm saying millions, millions of people. No, I don't think so. I think it's clickbait for the Daily Mail. I think it's misogynistic crap that, hey man, you can treat women like shit and they still will carry the torch for you. And that is such a toxic, stupid message. Yeah. Blah.
And it's also based on fantasy because she clearly barely
Oh,
knew this man. I mean, she'd been married to him for a very short period of time. When she married him, she wasn't aware that he was a cheater. She becomes aware he's a cheater. She has a very short relationship with him. So, how can you, 30 years on, look back wistfully and say that was the person that should have been in my life based on the fact that you knew very little about them anyway? How can you
uh,
still hold that person up as the ideal individual as your life partner?
I don't know. I think you're trying to make sense out of nonsense. I'm like, I can't get into that head. And I mean, I could speculate. It's so bananas. I mean, this guy cheated on you. I mean, do you want to go back 30 years later and win the pick me dance? Do you think, I'm better now. I
It
can
is.
win.
I think it's the whole issue of forgiveness, isn't it? It's the narrative surrounding it and whether you do it or not, and whether in the long run it actually works out for the best. I mean, I suppose, we've got to give the benefit of doubt. There will be situations where forgiveness does work and people go on and have a happy life. But as I was saying earlier, the trust is gone. Who wants a relationship without
Yeah.
trust?
Well, I mean, if you reconcile, yeah, I think you do have to a certain extent, forgive. But, I've seen it said you forgive, but you don't forget. And that doesn't mean you give people a blank check with your trust. You're giving them the gift of trying again. To me, I think it would be not be possible for me to get to Matt to forgive unless I was out of the relationship at great distance. And I think, and maybe it'll happen to you, maybe it'll happen to me. It's someday your ex comes crawling back and it's like, forgive me, Sarah. I was such an asshole. I was, maybe he's at his deathbed. You can think of any gory numbers of ways he might meet his end. But would it mean anything to you? I mean, you raise those kids, you're on the other side of all that trauma. I mean, if my ex said, "I'm so sorry," I'd be like, it's like the meter man, like, who are you? Like, why should I'm like, okay, whatever. If it makes you feel better, I wouldn't care. Would you care?
Well, I could never forgive now because he's shown me who he is. He's had next to nothing. He's not seen my two youngest children for years.
Yeah.
He's not, yeah, apart from the odd wistful text saying how much he misses them and how he wishes he could have more to do
Yeah.
with them. He's not made any real tangible effort. He's been on numerous holidays. He's not been involved in their lives. He's flitted in and out of their two oldest children's lives. And even if I could forgive him for what he did to me, I can't respect someone or love somebody that looks on parenting in that fashion. That's just
Absolutely.
shown however bad I was as a wife, however much I drove him to an affair, I could never have driven somebody to walk away from their children and have minimal involvement in their lives. Who does that? My
Monsters.
14-year-old, he could walk past him in the street, he probably wouldn't recognize him. They've had that little to do with themselves. He can try and blame me for that and say it's my fault. He can betray me as bitter, keeping him from his kids. But nothing would do that if it was me. I would
Yeah.
be fighting. I would be wanting to see those children. I would be putting an effort in. I'd be going to court. And also, if I'm that awful and that evil, then why leave children with somebody like that? This is the whole thing, isn't it?
Yes.
So,
Right.
yes, I probably could have forgiven very early on, but having watched the whole saga there is no forgiveness now. There's
Yeah.
just relief.
Well, that goes to another point, and also to your reconciliation point. If someone continues to actively hurt you, forgiveness is off the table. Forgiveness assumes that this was a sin, it's over, we're going to deal with that thing in the past. This is an ongoing violation. To keep continually neglecting your children, hurting them, showing your fake affect for them. Oh, I miss you, thinking of you, don't see you. Yeah, I wouldn't forgive it either. I don't really forgive my son's father. He's still kind of a shitty person doing shitty things.
I think
And
what's quite interesting is that, well, is would they forgive you for the same behavior? Because another very
oh
a common
man.
pattern when it comes to people having affairs is they project their own behavior onto their other half. So I know that when my husband was having an affair, he was always accusing me of cheating. Wherever I went, I was seeing someone, I was up to no
Yeah,
good.
right.
That I've had friends at work who were male and he'd instantly start a rant. He never trusted me. And he was absolutely filled with righteous indignation at the thought that I would have any sort of affair. And I
Mm,
never had an affair. But had I actually actively, properly had one, goodness knows what his reaction would be. There would have been no forgiveness. He would not have
yeah.
forgiven me for that because I saw it. I saw it in the behavior when he sort of tried to accuse me of having one, how appalled he was that anyone would do that to him. So we're expected to forgive them,
Well,
but
you're
would they do the same for us?
oh, you're the little people. Again, you're not respecting the hierarchy here. Who's the entitled person and who's the little person, and you're the little person. Of course, I mean, also you point out, yeah, your flaws are magnified, whatever they are, and in my case, I made spaghetti wrong. I had the wrong pasta to sauce ratio. I mean, these kinds of things were unforgivable. So yeah, if I'd actually done something, like cheat on him but he felt, or it was his narrative that I left him that was cheating on him. It's what he told me about his other two wives. So I wear the chump crown. Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah, they're not forgiving. But where I thought you were going, and this has happened on the blog, and I get these letters and they go to the UBT, where the cheater obviously is cheated, they are the bad actor and all this, and then they write to the chump, well, I forgive you. They do that, from that mount from on high. I forgive you for all your terrible things that you did that made me cheat. That they see it that way. Like, and ergo, how come you can't forgive me? I forgive you. Like it's all equal. Like we're all the same. It's a mind fuck. I think if you have forgiveness, you just keep it to yourself, inside your heart, away from the wreckage. And it's not on the front burner. It's a back burner issue. It's a when you're way outside the mess, then you can think about these philosophical issues like forgiveness.
The entitlement is quite staggering as well. So, my ex-husband, who, as I said, has had minimal involvement in the children. I mean, I sometimes look back and I think I'm not quite sure how I did that. Brought four children up.
I don't know
They
how
were
you
very, very young when he left, and I was working, and I don't know how I did it. And every so often, I'll get a text from him saying, "I'm so proud of our children. Are
Oh,
you?"
ugh,
How can you be proud of children that you've had minimal involvement with? It's just astonishing. And actually, we had this quite recently because it's my daughter's 18th birthday, and her grandfather, who is my ex-husband's father,
mhm.
and my ex-husband hated him with a passion when I first met him because his own father had had an affair and left
Oh,
as a child, and my ex was appalled at this behavior, so always never had a good word to say about his father. Anyway, the moment that he had his own affair, the father, his father, just dropped me. We'd always been on good terms. He dropped me like a
mhm.
moment and walked away from me. The grandchildren immediately aligned himself with the other woman, and that was it. Not involved in our life at all.
Ugh.
Anyway, I had a moment last year where I felt really guilty about all of this. So I thought it's not his fault. It's their grandfather. I will take him to the children to see him. So I took them to Cornwall. Um, it was one of those holidays where most of it was dedicated to giving him the time to spend with his grandchildren. During this meeting, it was his 80th birthday last year, and he said, "Right, you and my son need to knock your heads together.
Oh,
I
God.
need my grandchildren at my 80th birthday party, and you need to get them there." And I said to him, "It's none of my business. If you want your son to bring your grandchildren to your party to which I'm not invited, then he needs to do that. He
Yeah,
needs to commit himself to the long drive to Cornwall and to
yeah.
bringing them and to bringing them to put on display at your party." Anyway, after I said that, I've not heard from him again, not seen him again. He's clearly very annoyed with me. And then my daughter, for her 18th birthday, gets a card saying, "I'm so proud of you, and I'm so sorry I never hear you from you. Can you send me some photos?" And
Oh, the sad sausage.
it's entitlement without any sort of commitment. He wasn't there when I was desperately trying to sort out care for very young
No,
children.
fuck him.
Suddenly, now they're young adults. He wants them displayed at his 80th party, and he also wants to say how proud he is of them. And also this kind of pathetic, "Oh, I never see you." Oh, it's so
Oh, it is.
upsetting.
It's just the whole thing was self-pity from start. Also, I'm so proud of you. I don't follow you. I haven't seen you for years. I don't even have a picture of you. Send me one, but I am proud of you. Like, theoretically, proud that she turned 18. Like, what does he know of her life that he is proud of? I mean, I'm not saying there aren't great things to be proud of, but he wouldn't know it, right? He's
And
just
also,
like, what
it's
a
it's
nut.
it's like me seeing some random teenager in the street and saying, "I'm so proud of that teenager over there." Because you to be proud of somebody, you have to have a surely involvement in their upbringing. You have to be proud of something. It has to be partly something you've been instrumental
Right.
in
Well, you're
creating.
sure you're applying logic to it. I just see this as a manipulative old man who wants narcissistic supply, which he'll take with self-pity, like, poor me, I don't see here from my grandchildren, as if he has no agency, as if he can't pick up a phone or, I mean, he sent a note. That's nice. He remembered, but he pivoted back to himself. Um, oh God, and it solidifies this narrative that I'm sure his son did. It's like she keeps them away from me, like it's all you're the baddie and it's all you're doing to alienate him from his grandchildren. Oh, yeah. Ugh. I don't even know how you could forgive that. Guys,
And this is it, isn't it? This is what it comes down to when we talk about forgiveness. Can you forgive fundamentally something wrong in someone's character, something that isn't going to change. So it's let's sort of wrap the whole issue of forgiveness up. Maybe we'll get some stories. I mean, maybe people. I
Yeah.
love it when people get in touch with us.
Have you tried to forgive?
Maybe we
How'd
can
that
have
work?
both. Maybe we can have both sides. Have you forgiven and it's all worked out for the good? Have you had a joyful relationship after that? Has the trust come back? Are you confident that that forgiveness will pay off? Or have you forgiven and had your forgiveness effectively thrown back in your face? We're always open to these discussions.
Right, right.
To forgive or not to forgive?
Right. That is the question. Whether's just nobler. That wraps another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. You want to leave us a mighty story or a fuckwit of the week submission? Check out our new website, tellmehowyourmighty.com. That's yours spelt Youre. We've got all the episodes, show notes, links to our guests, and you can see the tea room where Sarah and I first met. If you enjoyed this episode, please review the podcast and follow us. Thanks. See you next week.